Guys, guess what? Session 1 is done.
Session 1?
It's in the books. We officially have started the challenge and we have an entry into our Google Sheets. So for today, you guys can already see the numbers. I'm going to post the numbers in the description every day. So we both ended up in the positive, which is amazing because before we took our dinner break, we were both losing hundreds of big blinds. But we want to go through a couple of hand breakdowns for you. But before we do, I just want this video to be based on honesty. So I know a lot of people talk about like how they would play hands, and they talk about all different kinds of things and different ways you should react to different things you should do. But I want to tell you that if we had both lost the first day, we were absolutely going to tell you guys like we are down hundreds of big blinds, and we're starting this challenge off in the negative, and that's okay because we're still going to end up winning thousands of dollars. But luckily, we both made some money today. So here goes. We were at a great table. Initially, like the first round or two, it was pretty quiet, but we really got the table pretty lively after that, and it was really a fun table. And that's definitely one of the most important things, right? Like,
yeah, we had a lot of fun. We had some wild and crazy players, which definitely drove the action. There was actually a period of time where there was a small transfer list to get on our table because we were so loud, lively. We had one guy buying drinks for the entire table. At our casino, the drinks are not free. He had won a huge hand, and he bought about 4 or 5 rounds of drinks, which probably totaled about $200. But he didn't mind because we were there, we were having fun, he was having fun, and fun tables are always easier to make money because people are much more likely to be in a gamble mode and be ready to put chips in the pot when they probably shouldn't because it seems like the fun thing to do.
Yeah, and if the fun players at the table want to drink, then have a drink. It's the fun thing to do, and aside from making money, like, this is your life, and you gotta have fun while you do it. You can't be playing every single day and be like the miserable guy trying to grind out like $30 an hour and just like make the exact right moves every single time, because they aren't actually not the most profitable people in the casino, because they're not going to get the craziness out of the characters at the table. And that's such an important thing to do when you're a professional player, is like actually have fun. And the recreational players, they're there for fun. They're there to win money, but they're really there for fun, and you want to allow them to have the maximum possible fun. So to start, do you want to do a hand breakdown, or should I?
Well, let's give them the results.
Okay.
We'll tell them what the results are. So we played 8 hours, which is longer than we expected. We really thought we'd be there for about 5 to 6 hours, but around the 4th hour, we got there at 6 p.m. As you can see outside, it's very dark. Right now, it's after 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, it's 3:23 right now. So.
But anyway, so we took a dinner break around 10 o'clock, which was 4 hours. We did play 8 hours total. And I'll let Ara explain to you where we were after our 4 hours.
All right, so yeah, we were both doing terrible. I was down over 100 big blinds. He was down like 300 big blinds, which for him is abnormally, like, he's never down 300 big blinds. He was down $600. He was in for $800.
And $600 down on a 1-2 table.
Yeah, he didn't even bring that much money. I had to lend him $300 at one point.
Is ridiculous.
So yeah, it was ridiculous.
But it was an amazing table to be at.
Yeah, it was fun.
In poker, you cannot be miserable because it's one long session, and you're gonna make a comeback. And you just have to stay positive. And luckily, we were at a table with nothing but people who wanted to have fun.
Yes. So let's get right to it. Hand number 1 is a hand that I made a big mistake on. And remember, this is session 1 of the challenge, and I was kind of happy. Everyone at the table knew we were doing the 25-day challenge. And I was kind of happy, Ray was kind of happy, but especially me. I think I was playing a little bit different to start. So someone in middle position raised to $7. 3 or 4 people called the $7. Ray was in the small blind in the 1 seat, and he called the $7. And I had 6-4 offsuit. I had 6 of hearts, 4 diamonds. The suits won't matter in this. I just had 6-4 offsuit, which is basically nothing. And I raised it to 41. And the reason why I raised it to 41, because I thought the $7 bets meant nothing. And also because I wanted to appear to be a fun player. And I thought re-raising with a weak hand was the fun thing to do. I'd be able to show 6-4 offsuit, and I get better action in the future. So, to my disappointment, the original raiser, who was a very fun player, ended up calling the $41. And the guy immediately to his left ended up calling the $41 as well. So I did not think they had a great hand, because usually when you raise to $7, you don't have one of the premium hands. And I didn't think the other guy that called had a premium hand because he only called the 7 initially. And if he had aces, kings, or queens, he probably would have re-raised. And probably a hand like ace king or ace king suited. So I didn't put them on great hands, but I was definitely hoping for 2 folds, or actually 6 folds. And I ended up getting 2 calls. So that was slightly disappointing. The flop came out 10-9-5 with 2 clubs. So there were definitely draws possible. And I thought that I should continue with my aggression. Since I was representing a hand like pocket aces, I would continue that. And if they both completely missed the flop, I would probably just get 2 folds. So I let out for 45. The original raiser folded, but the guy behind him ended up calling the 45. The turn was an offsuit king, which doesn't matter too much unless he had a hand like queen jack with a straight draw, or if he had a hand like king queen for a gut shot and just happened to hit the king.
Possible flush draw.
Yeah. So now the board is 10-9-5 with 2 clubs with a king in the turn. Still, I have nothing, so I check, and I thought queen jack or king anything is definitely possible, and I thought he might even keep me honest with a hand like ace 10. So I decided to check, and he checked behind. Now the river was a 6, giving me a pair, but I did not think my pair was good enough, unless he just happened to have an ace high flush draw on the flop that he called with. In which case, I probably didn't matter what I did in the river, out of position. But in hindsight, I don't like how I played the hand. I ended up betting $75 on the river. And I think that I should have just given up on the pot, because if he is the type of player to call a 3-bet with a hand like ace 10 and to call a bet with ace 10 on the flop, then he's probably the type of player to call a bet on the river. So I had a little over 200 left in my stack and he had me covered. So I think betting 75 was the absolute wrong play. That's what I did. I bet 75 and he called. I think a better play would have been to shove for my whole stack for about 200 something and give myself the maximum fold equity. But I think the best play possible would have been to just check and lose the pot. And quite often that's the best play. But when you're making a vlog for YouTube, that's not the most fun play. So I bet 75, I got called, I lost. And I was disappointed, and I knew that I made a play just because it's like the fun thing to do. So don't do that. So, Ray?
And he ended up showing pocket jacks, which pocket jacks made sense. The king most likely does not help this guy over here unless he happened to have a king high flush draw that he was betting on the flop. So I think the jacks, it was a pretty easy call, especially with the check on the turn. Maybe 3-barrel, you know, if he had bet the flop, the turn, and the river, it could have definitely been put him on aces. But by checking the turn when the king hits, it really makes his hand look a lot weaker, and I thought it was an easy call for jacks to make.
And we actually talked to the guy throughout the night. We became friendly with him. And about 3 hours later, we had mentioned the hand in a separate hand when I was re-raising pre-flop. And he referenced that hand and said that he absolutely knew that I was bluffing, and it was a very easy call to make with pocket jacks. And I knew it was the wrong bet, and I think he was being very honest about that it was an easy call for him to make. So,
all right, so that was our losing hand. My big losing hand before dinner, which definitely put me in the hole and was a big contributor to the negative. Before dinner, I was down $420, and this hand was I was on the button, and I had 4 deuce of clubs. Not a great hand, and I probably would never play it out of position, but on the button is so important. You get to go last, you get to see what everyone else does. So the action, someone in middle position had raised pre-flop to 14. There were 3 other callers. I was the 4th guy calling on the button. Raising in that position isn't always terrible, but the guy who had raised was not a loose player, and when he raised the 14, you know, I put him on a pretty decent hand. And then one guy behind me, who was the guy who limped in under the gun, he just called the 14. He was just a fun player there to have a good time. Limping in under the gun for him meant nothing.
Yeah, and you definitely want him in the pot. You definitely want to be in pots that he's in.
So the flop came out, and I was pretty happy with the flop. The flop was ace queen 5 with 2 clubs, which gave me a gut shot straight draw and a flush draw. Although the flush draw is only 4 high, it's still a pretty strong hand. Normally you think that you're gonna have 14 outs. You don't always have 14 outs, but you think you have 14 outs and you have them twice.
Well, 12. You get the 3 and the 9 clubs.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yep, 14.
12 outer.
Yep, 12 outer, my bad. So anyway, with that being said, the under the gun limper bet out $20, which is extremely small bet into the pot, which ended up being about $70 minus the rake. Then the guy who had raised pre-flop, min raised him to 40. But I did not think that that was a super strong play. I thought it was almost that he completely dismissed the $20 bet, almost as if it was a check. Like, why is he betting $20? All right, I'm just gonna raise to 40, so we get a decent amount of money in there. So anybody that calls has to call $40 versus 20. I was wrong. The min raise, which this guy, he was a pretty tight, pretty solid player, did mean very strong hand. He was actually trying to get action with this hand. So anyway, it folded around to me, and I really put him on a hand because he was the pre-flop raiser in early position, one under the gun. I put him on a hand like ace king, possibly ace queen, possibly ace jack, but I would take ace king and ace queen over the two of those. And with ace king and ace jack, you know, my options were I could just call. I could fold. Folding I thought was definitely the wrong play. Or I could raise and I could shove all in.
I don't think folding is a choice for that. I mean, I think you have to at least call. I mean,
yeah.
you got a 12 outer and you get a very, very hidden type of hand, especially if you hit the 3. So I think folding is completely off the table. So you have to at least call.
I didn't want to think too long because I don't want to, you know, I don't want to make people think and try to come up with a reason why I did what I did. So I ended up going all in for $182, which was 142 on top. So I thought if he had a hand like ace king, definitely a hand like ace jack or worse, the fold equity is huge. Like, he's just gonna fold and I'm gonna win the pot. And the original $20, I was not concerned about him. So like the guy under the gun, $20 insta folds, and he insta calls me with a set of queens. The hand runs out. I don't make anything. He ends up felting me, and at that point, that put me down 400 for the first session. I don't hate the way I played the hand. I think it was pretty good. I just wish that maybe there was a way for me to know that his min raise meant extreme strength versus mediocre strength. So that was my hand that I thought was pretty interesting. Would love to get comments on that if you think maybe calling in that situation is better because he was a tight, solid player.
Yeah, I think in hindsight, I don't hate the way that you played it, but I think that calling should probably have been considered a little bit more, because someone that either has ace king or ace jack, and I thought those are two very likely hands for him. My first guess probably would have been ace jack, kind of trying to take control of the hand. If I had to guess one first, I think ace jack would have been my first guess. Ace king would have been my second guess. He ended up having a set of queens, but I think the type of player that is willing to raise isn't too afraid of an all-in bet for less than 100 big blind. So I don't think 180 looks intimidating enough, and you might get one of those type of situations where someone has ace jack or ace king, and they're like, oh my god, like I don't know what to do, but you know, I just think my hand's too good to fold, and I'm just gonna give you action. Yeah. And then it turns out to be a situation where you're pretty much 50-50. I mean, you got like 48%, he has 52%, and then you got a little bit of extra money in the pot, so it's okay. But I think the fold equity is probably not as much as you think it is. Probably only like a 20% chance of him folding.
Yeah, the raise was definitely for the fold equity. If I was to only call, the benefit of that is 100% the guy who originally bet $20 is never folding for only $20 more, and he can have any range of hands. I'm definitely not putting him on another flush draw that's gonna have me beat. I mean, he's the kind of guy that may have just had second pair, a gut shot, anything that he would have bet $20 with. So I do push him out of the hand. If I'm going to get called by the guy who went to 40, I push out the other guy and possible more money if I do make my hand on the turn. So anyway, that was that hand. Don't think I played it terribly. Just wish that I saw the min raise as extreme strength versus mediocre strength.
Okay.
So that was my big hand before we did go to dinner.
Okay. I'll quickly run down my videos. I mean my last two hands. So this isn't like a 1 hour video, but I played ace queen kind of in an oddball way, And I think I played it beautifully up until the end when I made the wrong decision. And I gave myself the chance to make the right decision. So someone, actually the guy that he was just talking about with the set of queens, we then viewed that guy as a very tight player. So he raises to $7. A couple other people call $7. Ray ends up calling $7 in the button. And I had the option to call 7, but I really wanted to get some insight into what Mr. Pocket Queens had. So I made a very unusual play, and I raised to $17. And the reason why was I wanted to find out how he would react to my raise. So I had ace queen of diamonds, and he ended up just quickly calling without a thought, just quickly calling the extra $10. So did everyone else on the table. So now it's 17 times 5 to see the flop. And there's 85 in there, minus the rake is $80. So the flop came out ace with 2 little cards, and it was a rainbow. I had a backdoor flush draw. I had ace queen of diamonds, and I just went right out and I bet $20. And
very small for the size of the pot.
Yeah, and at this point, since I wasn't doing so well, I was a little bit of a short stack. And he just kind of like thought about it for a second, and he just decided to put me all in for $85. So then we got 3 folds, and it was back to me. And I was thinking to myself, I think on one hand, he might have the best hand here, and I don't think he's going to bluff me. But then on the other hand, I thought ace queen was too good to fold. I'm going to gloss over the details a little bit just for the sake of not making this video an hour. But I ended up calling off the rest of my chips because I thought my hand was too good to fold, ace queen and ace high flop, especially when I have an image of a crazy player. But I did get the sense that he was never bluffing me and he was value betting me. So the worst hand I thought he would do that with was ace jack. But I really didn't think he had ace jack. And I ended up just calling off the rest of my chips and losing, so I lost over $100 in that hand.
He had ace king.
Yeah, he had ace king.
Made a lot of sense.
Queen.
He was just making a small pre-flop raise just because that was the fun thing to do.
Yeah.
It was a very fun table, and people were not making decisions based on the best poker decision. They're making decisions on what their neighbor was saying and thinking, and you know, who bought the last drink. Like, it was really just like, hey guys, let's just have a good time. So $7, even though he had ace king, it was just the fun thing to do.
And my next hand, I'll just go right into my big hand of the day. So I had been making a slight comeback after the dinner break, and the table turned into be a very, very fun table. The floor had to come by a couple of times, tell us to quiet down, and we were drinking, we were all having fun, we were all teasing each other about each other's like sisters and waitresses, and hi Ashley, if you're watching the video, just wanted to mention you. And I'm going to tell you next time I mention you in the video too, so you better watch this. So anyway, I raised with pocket 2s under the gun, which he kind of disagrees with my decision to even play that hand pre-flop like that. But I raised to 12 under the gun, which I don't usually raise to 12, but I wanted to make a normal raise, and I got a whole bunch of callers.
Right, so with that being said, the reason normally you do want to raise with your pocket pairs because you need to build a pot. And
plus I raise with everything.
And you don't want to be involved with 6 or 7 people when you limp in on the gun and the whole table does. The problem is that this table, there were a good amount of re-raises pre-flop, so when you do that with pocket 2s, usually you don't get to see the flop when you're being re-raised to 45 or 50 pre-flop, which was pretty normal at this table, but he did get lucky. Everybody at the table pretty much called the raise and nobody re-raised.
Yeah, so it was 72 minus the $5 rake, give or take, so 67 bucks in the pot. And the flop came beautiful, 10-6-2. The 2 was actually in the window card, and then I saw the 10 and 6 afterwards. So 10-6-2 rainbow. So we were playing with some decent sized stacks at this point. I had over $500 in my stack at this point. And I decided to check because it was such an action table. I knew someone would bet behind me. The action player at the table, who had shown a tendency to play a wide variety of hands, he ended up betting $60, and I knew he absolutely had a hand that he liked. Now, someone on the far end of the table, the guy that earlier called my bluff, he called the $60. So by this point in the day, we had a lot of history. So everyone else in the hand folded, it got back to me, I'm out of position, and I decided to check raise to $160. Now, the reason why I did this is because it is so easy to throw in an extra $100, especially when you're having fun. It's just $100. Keep the numbers nice and easy. If you want someone to call, let them throw in an extra $100. So I went to 160. Did he call an extra $100? No, of course not. All my plans, nothing goes right. I don't know. But so he ended up going all in. He goes all in for 430-ish on top of the 160. So the board's 10-6-2. I have pocket twos. I check. He bets 60. The other guy calls 60. I go to 160, and he goes to like, what is that? 590. I think 590.
Yeah.
He goes to 590.
And he had 900 on the table, but effectively it was 590.
Yeah, and this is a 1-2 game. He goes to $590. Oh my God. So the other guy on the far end of the table that I had the history with, he ends up calling off the rest of his chips, 190. I really wasn't worried about him because I thought he would be the type of player to just call with a 10. So,
and he would have raised the initial 60. The history that he had with the other player, he definitely would have raised the extra 60 if he had an overpair or a set.
Yes,
he would have never just called it $60. So once he put
he would have stuck in his stack with something like that.
Once he put in his 190, he is most likely drawing very, very dead. I mean, he's very,
I absolutely
very
think
dead.
it's very, very highly likely he had a hand like Jack 10.
He was trying
10-6
to
board.
triple or quadruple up or go home, which is what happened because after he lost the hand, he went home.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't even put a thought into what he had. He was kind of like just an overlooked player in the hand, completely overlooked. So I had to make a decision, and I got the guy who just bet 590 to talk a lot in the hand. He was already a talker, and he's a great guy. We're going to go out to dinner with him and everything. But he was a talker, and he kind of was being nice to me in a way, and he kind of told me that, this is what you should do if you have an overpair. This is what you should do if you haven't set. This is what you should do with this. This is what you should do with that. And he's talking about all these things. And I'm thinking, yes, he absolutely would play this way if he had pocket sixes or pocket tens. But that's not necessarily what I put him on. He might have just called 12 pre-flop with like an overpair, like pocket jacks, pocket queens. He might have a hand like ace 10 offsuit, ace 10 suited, ace 10 anything. He might even have a hand as weak as king 10, and that's the fun thing to do. But also we can't overlook the fact that he might have a hand like 10-6 suited, 6-2 suited, 10 deuce suited, or even offsuit.
From my point of
the
view,
fun thing.
I wasn't in the hand. My point of view, it sounds crazy, but I'm putting him on something like 10-6. Pre-flop, I mean, he had $1,000 almost to start the hand to call, a one pre-flop bet. He's calling with anything. If he has 10-6 suited, he's calling. Hadn't seen him go all in for 900 the whole night. So it definitely was a good hand. And he could do it with a set, but it seemed like a two-pair kind of bet to me, or a pocket jacks kind of hand. But even more so than pocket jacks, I really thought it was two-pair, even though any two-pair would be terrible pre-flop cards. He was the kind of guy that would have played those pre-flop because it would have been fun, and he would have been able to beat his buddy at the table with a 10-6 and rub it in his face and laugh at him, and it just would have been fun.
Yeah,
so
I think that's possible, but I think it's hard to play like 10-6 initially or 6-2 initially. So my first instinct was that he's playing like a 10 with a good kicker, or for some reason he didn't raise with pocket jacks. Like I think ace 10 and pocket jacks would be my two first guesses. I don't think he actually showed what he had, but I think he kind of alluded to that he had ace 10. And I'm not in the habit of always playing bottom set for 300 big blinds, but I decided to make the call. It was the right decision. Both of the two players, I think they both had a 10. I think he had ace 10. I think the other guy had something like jack 10.
Yeah.
So they were both drawing very, very thin against my set, and it ended up being a $1,200 pot. So I'm really happy that I kept a good attitude going through the dinner break and put myself in position to make an incredible comeback for 1-2. Definitely one of my top 10 sessions of the year at a 1-2 table, because $1,000 in profit is 500 big blinds, which you definitely don't do that every day.
All right, and then I'll go very, very quickly here. So my big hand, which really gave me a boost for my comeback, we got back from dinner. I won a couple small hands. I would say maybe 3 or 4 hands. I was probably about $150 on those 4 hands. So now I'm sitting at the table, and I think I have probably $300, $350 on the table because I had gone broke and I was in for way too much money. But long story short, I looked down at pocket queens, and I'm in pretty good position, probably like 2 from the button, and so I raise obviously pre-flop, so I go to 15 even, and 2 guys after me decides to re-raise to $40, actually 35 it was, sorry, to 35, and he was not a guy who would re-raise pre-flop very often.
What position was he in? Was he in the blinds or?
No, he
So he
was
on
in,
the
he had
button?
position on me.
Okay.
Yeah,
so you were in the hijack and he was in the button?
Yeah, I believe he was the button. So when he went to 35, I was a little worried. I wasn't positive, but I definitely put him on a premium hand because he hadn't re-raised pre-flop. But there's no way that I'm ever going to fold for 20 more with queens. But re-raising was not even a thought in my mind because it's way too likely he has aces or kings in this situation. Ace-king is very likely.
And I agree with him. He was definitely one of the tighter players. And when he 3-bet, I was thinking this is not the type of guy you re-raise unless you have aces. I did
not think I had him dominated. I didn't put him on jacks or tens. He would have just called.
Okay.
So unless he was making a play, I really didn't think so.
Okay.
So.
And you got one of the worst flops of the day, right?
So long story short, the flop comes out, and the flop comes out queen 9-3.
Oh, you're hoping for a queen.
The queen is in the window. Bingo. Now I'm praying he has aces or kings because I mean, what else can it be?
It's funny how you go from hoping he doesn't have aces or kings initially to like praying he has aces or kings in a matter of like 3 seconds.
So, I definitely want to get full value. My goal is to double up in this hand. Lots of times I find that it's usually easier to get somebody to get all their money in on the turn when you're deep stack because on the flop sometimes it's just too many blinds. So the weird thing is that he bet out relatively small. He bet out $40. And most of the time I'd probably raise in this situation, but I really wanted to win a big pot and try to disguise my hand. There was a flush draw out there. I wasn't worried that he had a flush draw. I mean, if he had ace king and it just happened to be that flush draw, so be it. I mean, I'm going to play my hand. I'm not going to be scared of that one particular hand. So I decided I was only calling because I wanted to try to get it in on the turn. So the turn comes and the turn is a complete miss. Doesn't do anything for either of us. He comes out and he bets out 75. Now I really think he has aces or kings. He's trying to get me to make a mistake. I shove. He calls before I can get my chips in the pot.
I'm watching this hand and he instantly shoves as soon as the other guy bets 75. He instantly check raise shoves. And the other guy instantly called. This all happens in the course of 2 seconds. I absolutely thought the other guy had aces, but he said
he ends up having pocket threes
for bottom set.
I would have never thought pre-flop he would ever re-raise with pocket threes in that situation, but he was in position. I do play a lot of hands. I do raise a lot of hands pre-flop. He probably just wanted to try to win a big hand against me. Unluckily for him, it was set over set. Set over set in a 1-2 game, especially with only a couple hundred big blinds. Nobody's getting away from it. It's a cooler. There's not much you can do. Sometimes the only way you're getting away from it is if scare cards hit the board. Didn't happen this time. I ended up doubling up. Now I'm sitting there with 700 on the table. Long story short, at the end of the session, I ended up $53. Definitely not a big win, but when you're down 600 on a 1-2 game and you leave up $53, great comeback. Feel very good about it.
I absolutely thought when we were going to be making this video, we were both going to be down hundreds of dollars. So just the fact that we're both up is amazing in itself.
And this is running a little bit long, but I just want to go over one thing that I feel like we missed earlier in our first video.
To the 1 of a million of you that are still watching the video, thank you.
Yes. So anyway, one thing is when we talk about averages and your hourly average in poker, you definitely want to play enough hours so that your average is legitimate. And what I mean by that is he won $1,000 in a 1-2 game today. Whether you want to get to the point where one huge hand or one huge session, winning or losing, will not affect your average by more than maybe $1 per hour. So with that being said, a huge win in 1-2 is a $1,000 win. You should have about 1,000 hours of playing before you really consider your average legitimate. That's going to be for a full-time player about 6 months. Because at that point, any bad beat isn't going to sway things one way or the other. It's going to sway it slightly, but it's not going to make you go from $24 down to $18 an hour, or the other way, $18 to $24 an hour. You're going to be within $1 at the end of that session, even though it's probably going to be the biggest win or biggest loss that you had in that 6-month period. So you definitely want to make sure that you have a lot of hours so that you do not get discouraged if your average isn't very high. And also you don't want to be too high and you think that you're making $30 an hour after playing for 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden, after a couple of months, you're like, what happened? Like, I'm negative. I'm down money because it was a false hourly average.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. So for a really quick and easy math example, if you had 1,000 hours of playing time on a 1-2 table, and you were up $12,000 in that span of time, then your average is $12 an hour. Now, if you go and you lose $500 the very next session, your average is only going to go down to $11.50 an hour. You'd be up $11,500. So the swings in the hourly average are not super dramatic. But when you have less than 1,000 hours, if you only have 200-300 hours, then the swings are much more than 50 cents when you input the numbers. So yeah, he's right. You definitely need 1,000 hours. I mean, to get a true average, you probably need thousands of hours. But in live poker, that's just really not possible because you actually improve as a player the more that you play. So your hourly average should be going up on average.
And again, we've been playing for about 15 years. Now, like I tell everybody, especially people who don't play poker, I say to them, because they always ask weird questions about winning and losing. I always said, I 100% have losing sessions. I've had losing weeks. And I think I've probably even had losing months.
Yeah, you lost $5,800 in one hand in Bellagio, so.
In 15 years, though, I've never had a losing year.
Yeah.
So, in the long run...
You might not have had a losing month either. I don't know if you've had a losing month.
In the long run, poker definitely can be profitable. But you got to remember, you can definitely lose any night you're at the casino. You can lose for an entire week at the casino. But once you get into longer periods of time, if you're losing at poker after months or a year, you may want to think about a different hobby. And it's not, just unless you enjoy it so much that you don't mind paying to do it. It's like if you're a golfer. Say you go golfing. You go golf, it's going to take you 4 to 5 hours. It costs you $50 or $60 to play. It's a negative $15 per hour hobby. So if you don't mind losing some money playing poker, but you have a ton of fun, awesome. It's a hobby. But definitely do not fool yourself into thinking you're a winning or losing player based on a short period of time.
Yes.
So with that being said...
Although that being said, if you play 1-2 no limit, which is typically the worst poker players in the whole casino, otherwise they'd be playing higher limits. If you play 10 times and you are actually down after that 10 session period, then you are doing a whole bunch of things wrong. So we're going to try to help you. Leave some comments in the bottom of the video.
Ask us questions. We love criticism. So if you think we played the hands wrong that we discussed, if you think we played them great, please let us know. If you have any questions, ask. We're here to answer, and we will be honest with anything you ask.
All right, and also as a bonus, if you actually made it through the whole 32 minutes, as a bonus, when we see you in the casino next time we play, we're going to buy you a drink. So remind me this. This video is up to like 33 minutes now. So, like, share, subscribe, everything. We appreciate you guys watching, and definitely leave us any comments. We love talking about this stuff.
All right. Got to go home, go to bed. Good night. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night, guys.